Welcome to my channel. My name's Chance, and it's time to talk about a board game. Now, in today's video, I'm going to be doing a review of a two-player card game called Lone Wolves. So this is a two-player trick-taking lane battler, and I'm absolutely loving this game. I think it is a really smart design and just a really unique one in the space. So for this video, I'm going to be doing an overview of how to play this game, and then talking about the things I like and maybe don't like in this game, and hopefully find out if this game is also right for you. So let's just get things kicked off and start with this overview. So I have Lone Wolf set up here, as mentioned, two-player lane battler. So we have the 5 lanes out here corresponding to the 5 suits of the cards that players are going to be competing over. And at the beginning of the game, everyone is going to be dealt a hand of 13 cards. There will be 4 cards not in the game, so that's going to add to that variability in the game because you're not going to know exactly what cards are available to be played during the round. Or I should say during the game, because it is a one-round game. Other things to note that are set up is the point values for each one of the lanes are randomly assigned. So here we can see this lane's worth 10, this lane's worth 12, then 9, 6, 7, and then there's also the scar tokens in the center of each of these territories. We're going to come back to those scar tokens. But as I mentioned, it's a trick taker, so pretty standard. We have our 13 cards, and the way the game is going to work is the lead player is going to choose a card from their hand and play it down into one of the lanes. So I'm just going to throw this one into this lane. Now note that the suit of the card does not have to match the territory that's going to. Those suits are going to matter in a second here. We'll talk about when those become important. But essentially, it is a standard trick taker, so I have just played a 5 of the whatever this is, the plains or something, and so 5 of yellow. Then my opponent is going to have to, so here's my opponent's hand, they have to follow suit if they can. If they can't, they can throw off suit, they just will not win the trick. But in this case, my opponent does have a card, and they can play this one. They can play it anywhere they want. So let's say they want to go there. So they do not have to play into the same lane that I played to. And that becomes important because we are competing for these lanes, and you may want to change up which lanes you're going to value over your opponent more. So in this case, I played a 5, my opponent played a 6. I am going to lose that trick. So my opponent gets to leave their card face up, and now this one becomes a power of 6 in this lane over here. So my opponent's doing pretty good over there. Now my card, because I lost, I actually get to flip that one face down, and not get to, I have to. And now this card becomes a Lone Wolf, and this is now a value of 1. Ooh, that's not much power there. But my little consolation prize for losing this lane is that I get to take one of these scar tokens. Now note that there are 3 scar tokens in each territory, and there is one that's face up. So there's one that I have known information for, and I can take that one and use that one if I want. Now, I can also take the risk of taking one of those face down ones. And when I take one of these card tokens, I'm just going to put it into any one of my lanes. So let's just say that I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to take this card token right here. We're going to reveal that one and see what I get. This one is, that symbol is for honor points. So this is 1 honor point per card in the lane. I believe this is face-up card. There's a nice little reference in the back of the rulebook that tells you exactly what things are going to do, but we can actually look out here and see some other tokens that are in play. So this one here is actually 2 points per lone wolf in a lane. So if I took that one, I actually might want to just put it into this lane because I already have a lone wolf there. So that lone wolf becomes worth 2 victory points at the end, as long as it's still there. This is 2 victory points per any color card in a lane. This is 3 victory points per 2, 3, 4 in a lane. And then we have, ooh, this one's really nice because we can actually take this tile, and if I put this down in a lane, so let's say this person's doing good in this lane and I managed to get this scar token. If I place it here, I would immediately flip over the points token in that lane, and this one goes from a 10 to a 6. But unfortunately, I did not lose in that lane, so maybe next time. So when I gain one of these scar tokens, all I'm going to do is I get to place this into any one of my lanes. It does not have to go into the lane that I just lost. I can just be like, you know what, that one's there, and I need face-up cards for this lane, so I'm going to go here. I'm going to say that I'm going to try to win that lane and get some more honor points from that lane. And that trick is done. And then we're just going to go back. The lead player becomes the one that won the trick, and they're just going to take their hand and be like, you know what, I'm going to play a card. And there are a couple cards with some powers in here. There's the 3, which is going to be reveal a scar token as soon as you play it. So if there's a scar token that's face down, you reveal one of those face down tokens, which gives you a little more insight and a little less randomness so when you play those 3s. And then also the suits wrap around. The 2 actually beats the 7. So you have to kind of watch out, because like I might have a hand where I have some 7s in here. I'm like, ooh, look at all those 7s in my hand. Like, oh, I got 4 7s. That's great. But the problem is, if I don't have those 2s, then I could be at risk because those 7s are not the strongest if my opponent has those 2 cards. So I got to be careful when playing those 7s if I'm expecting a win. Now, so that's the 2s and the 3s, and yep, we just continue. So my opponent's going to be like, you know what, I'm going to play a 4 into here, and then I'm going to respond, and I'm going to play I'm like, you know what, I'm going to play my 7, get a lot of power, and I'm going to try to win this one. So now I have my 7 there, my opponent loses, they flip their card face down, and now they're going to take a Scar token. And this is how the game plays out. We're just going to continue this, and we're going to go until we are done playing through our hand of 13 cards, and then we're going to see who has the most power in each one of these lanes and assign honor tokens. So we're just going to be like, okay, this one I have 7 versus 6, done. That's I win that lane, and then maybe, yep, we'll keep on going down and see who wins each one of those lanes. We'll add up the points from those honor tokens for each one of the lanes, plus any points that we got from the bonus Scar tokens we got on our side, and whoever has the most points at the end is going to win the game. Now, there's a couple other rules that I need to mention about this game before I dive into what I like about this. The first one being that there can only be a maximum of 6 wolves per lane. So that is total of 6 wolves on both sides of the board. So as soon as there's 6 on both sides of the board, that lane is now closed. And this becomes so important as we get towards the end of the game because you can kind of lock a player out of being able to influence a lane by kind of just dumping wolves into certain lanes, especially lone wolves. Like we have this 2 point per lone wolf honor token. If I could manage to just keep losing in this lane, if I get 4 wolves out there, oh man, now my opponent's like, I can only get 2 wolves out there. Maybe it becomes a bit of a risk for them to play into that zone. So you can kind of lock players out of those other territories. Now, the other thing to call out is that as soon as the Scar tokens are depleted from one zone, so let's say I managed to deplete the Scar tokens from that area, and I'm like, you know what, I got that one there, I'm going to throw this one over here again. This zone now has no Scar tokens left in the center. I'm going to take this moon token and we're going to place that on the board here, and this zone becomes worth an extra 5 points. But more importantly, this zone also becomes the trump suit. So as I mentioned, this is a trick taker, but it starts without a trump suit until that moon token comes out. So now I have red is trump for the future of this game and at this moment. And this is, we're going to come back to this on the things I like because this gives players so much control over the game. Now, next thing to note is that as soon as a second territory, let's say this territory is also depleted and my opponent has thrown out a bunch of these tokens, this territory is depleted. Once a second territory becomes depleted, we put out the blood moon token. So same thing, we're going to add 3 points to this lane right here. Now the trump actually changes and the trump is now the blood moon token for the remainder of the game. So we're going to play out the rest of our hands and then see who earns the most honor points at the end of the game. So that is my overview of how Lone Wolves plays. Now let's move on to the things I like about this game. First up, trick takers. I absolutely love trick takers. I grew up playing euchre, so just trick takers, they're fantastic. I love playing all sorts of trick takers with all sorts of variations on it, and Lone Wolves is a fantastic trick taker. I think that if I had a complaint, 13 cards is kind of a lot to manage in the beginning of a trick taker, but the amount of control players get is so phenomenally good in this game that I enjoy coming back to this one. So in trick takers, I find that the biggest thing that is hard for players to learn is that pacing. Like, when do I win? When do I lose? And Lone Wolves just drives that home with this whole losing mechanic and that lone wolf mechanic. Because yes, you want to win to be able to have the most strength in a territory. Like having that 7 out, that's a lot of power. You want to have all that power in the territory. That's why you're going to want to be careful if there's a 2 in play, because you don't want to play your 7s and lose to a 2. Like, you just lost a boatload of power. You just lost 6 power in that lane if you lose to a 2. So you're being careful with those 7s. So yeah, managing this pacing of when do you win, when do you lose, keeping track of those cards, and I feel like it's pretty easy to keep track of these cards. Well, it's as easy as other trick takers, I should say. But the idea of winning and losing, or the pacing of winning and losing, is just clear cut in this game. The other thing is, maybe you want to be careful about winning. Maybe you need those Scar tokens. I actually got myself into a position in one of my games of Lone Wolves where I was like, you know what? I have a ton of green cards. I know my opponent doesn't really have any green cards. I set it up where I got to set Trump to be green with a Blood Moon token at the end of the game. I was the only one with Trump. I was like, I can win every hand now. But the problem was I got locked out of some of these zones. We had 6 wolves in some of these lanes that were worth the most points, and I no longer wanted to win territories. I was like, I need to lose. I need scar tokens. But I kind of locked myself into this path where I was like, in general, I have a very strong trick-taking hand. Like, I know I can win the next 4 or 5 tricks. And usually that's great in a trick taker. But in this one, I was like, oh man, I need to lose because now my opponent's going to be taking all those scar tokens and getting these bonus points and flipping over these high value tokens. Like when you get this token to flip over one of those honor tokens in a lane, like you can see that this one here, this one's worth 7. But if you manage to flip that over, that makes it worth 12. That is a 5-point swing. Maybe I was going for that 12 and my opponent's just like, nah, I'm going to place that token there. And now that lane you wanted that you thought was worth 12 is worth 7. So that can be a game changer if you manage to get those scar tokens. And the other thing is that I think that it's just so cool that this plays in one round. So a lot of trick takers, lots of card games actually say like, okay, you need to play multiple rounds to kind of even out the luck of the deal, right? Like you gotta play 2 to 4 rounds or something to mitigate that some person getting a bad hand and kind of flatten the score a little bit. But in this one, it plays great in just a single round because of the way that trump is defined. So you can be winning those tricks early on and your opponent can be like, you know what, I'm gonna let you win. I'm gonna keep on losing and I'm gonna lose in that same territory over and over until I deplete those scar tokens and I get to place down this moon token and now I define trump and now I'm taking control of the game. Sure, took you 3 cards to get there. There's 13 cards in the game, so you're like, I'm just gonna burn 3. I'm gonna get some of those scar tokens. We're gonna change the game a bit. Then I'm going to define trump, and then I'm going to take over this game. And now it's in their hands. They're like, okay, I am driving this game now. And now the person that was in the lead in the beginning is like, oh no, what just happened? And now you're like, I think I'm going to have to change trump. So I'm going to start losing in a territory, and let's change up the trump category so I can start winning and taking control of this. So just the pacing considerations, the when do you win, when do you lose, is winning good? Maybe not. So I love games that are kind of forcing you to kind of make those trade-offs during the game. It's not just a straightforward, I want to play a higher number here and I want to play a high number there. It is a very difficult decision on where you're going to play those cards to win, where do you want to lose, where do you want to get those scar tokens, where do you place those scar tokens when you play them. Yeah, just a phenomenal design. So if I have some critiques of this game, so let's dive into the things that I don't like about Lone Wolves. Honestly, not a lot. Like I said, I think 13 cards is a lot of cards to manage. So when I teach this game, I think this is the biggest sticking point, is being like, yeah, this is how we play the game. And then a player has 13 cards in their hand and they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like this, what am I doing? But I feel like once you get to that first game, it's not that big of a deal. Generally those first like 4 or 5 cards are kind of just setting things up, setting the stage, and then players get into it on that second game. Like that second game I feel like runs very smoothly. The other thing that I'm not crazy about, this board, let's just talk about production for a second. The board is not very flat. You can see here I got my board butlers down here. I talked about the board butlers in my accessories video. So yeah, if I don't have these on here, this board is very, it's like a nice mountain range on my table. But other than that, maybe more variation would be nice. Like you're gonna see all the scar tokens on your the first game, maybe the second game. You're gonna basically see all the options that are out there, which is good because that way you can actually do more planning. You can do a little more strategy. You can try to seek out the scar tokens that you're going for. So it's a bit of a trade-off. So maybe not a lot of variability, but not a game that I'm usually looking for a lot of variability. I find that trick taking for me is just engaging. I like the core puzzle of trick taking, like that head-to-head experience with that trick taking, trying to judge how my opponent's going to play their cards, especially when we both have 13. There's only 4 cards removed, so you have a pretty good idea of what your opponent's hand looks like. So you can actually play out your cards, kind of forcing them down the path that you want them to take, which that is the part of trick taking I love. There's not a whole lot else that I don't like about this game. Now, the last thing I'm going to mention is that there is a little bit of variation, because if I clear this board here, we can actually flip this board over and go to the advanced side. The advanced side is not actually that different. There's just a little bit of variation, so you don't actually have to teach a whole lot. It actually just changes up the number of scar tokens in one of the zones. So you can see here, there are actually going to be 4 scar tokens in the center of this one instead of 3 like in the other zones. Then we also have a little bit of asymmetry with where you can place place the scar tokens. So generally you can place 3 out, but now here you can see that I have 2 on my side in this mountain zone. They have 2 in the fire lava zone, and then also I have a split token spot in between this dark and light area, and then they have a split token zone between this like desert and forest area on their side. So it sets up an asymmetric lane battler, which I think is a nice little variation that they added in the game to kind of change up your strategy a bit, change up the play style a little bit, and to keep this game engaging. Okay, that is going to do it for my review of Lone Wolves. I hope you can tell that, yeah, I really do enjoy this game. This combines 2 things that I really like. Well, 3 things. Like, I love 2-player games. 2-player games, I find, one, you only have to teach one other person. Number 2, generally they play pretty quickly because you only have one other person at the table, so you don't have a lot of downtime between your turns. And then I love lane battlers. Like, I've just been diving into this category, playing more and more lane battlers. There are so many good ones out there, and Lone Wolves is a fantastic lane battler. And then trick takers, I love finding unique trick takers that have different variations. I love the trade-off between winning and losing this game. The addition of those scar tokens in this game was just, that is such a smart design choice. So yeah, Lone Wolves is one that I definitely recommend. If you do like trick takers, if you do like lane battlers, this one is worth giving a shot. All right, so that's going to do it for today. That is my review of Lone Wolves. Thank you for watching, and thank you for spending your time with me, and I will talk to you next time.